This is Rob Arona with your weekly Torah video. This week, we are not going to address the COVID pandemic, and this is not an uplifting message. We are going to talk about Parashat Naso, the weekly Torah reading, in the context of failed leadership and the protests surrounding the murder of George Floyd and other African Americans, and the Black Lives Matter movement, and the protests around the country and around the globe. In this week's Parashat, starting with the fifth Aliyah, we find that after Moses completes the erection and dedication and sanctification of the Mikdash, the portable tabernacle in the wilderness, then the tribal princes show up and say, look, we have gifts for the Mikdash, the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Now, if you recall, when the Mishkan was being constructed, the citizens, the Israelites, came with all kinds of construction materials. So much material that the craftsmen had to say, enough already, we have too much. We can't take any more material. And so Moses had to issue an edict to say, stop bringing already. After everything's already said and done, then the leadership shows up a day late and $1 short with their gifts. Clueless, privileged, saying, me too, me too. And sadly, this is often the case with leadership, that they just aren't in tune with what the people are doing, with what the people need, with what the people want, with what is going on in their communities. And this is the case today. Everybody is aware of what's going on in the country and in the world in the face of the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And everybody is aware of the protests and the responses by the police, the act of the president in what I see as the violation of the Posse Comitatus Act in calling up active duty military troops to go up against American citizens on US soil, not using National Guard troops, which is legal, but actual active duty troops, which is not legal. The police forces around the country attacking peaceful protesters. And in the state where I live, Washington State, things have been very grim. I posted a post on Facebook yesterday afternoon, which was extremely critical, and I'm going to summarize it here. 3 major cities on the West Coast: Olympia, Tacoma, and Seattle. Olympia is the capital of Washington State, Tacoma, a major port city, and of course Seattle everybody knows about. The home of grunge music, the home of Starbucks, the Emerald City, a huge tech city. All 3 of these have had huge problems. In Seattle, the police department has had problems for many years and has been under a federal consent decree because of excessive force, racial profiling, and so forth. And their current mayor, Jenny Durkin, and their police chief, Carmen Best, who is herself African American, have not been able to control their department. And even worse, 2 days ago, they had a state police troop in there whose commander ordered the state troopers, don't kill them, but hit them really hard. And this was witnessed and recorded by the director of the Seattle Pride organization. Their commander was directly assaulted the state directly instructed the state troopers to hurt citizens who were peacefully protesting. In Tacoma, it was recently revealed that in March, Manuel Ellis was murdered by Tacoma police in exactly the same manner that Minneapolis police murdered George Floyd, by kneeling on his neck and asphyxiating him. But we never heard about that until now because of the way these crimes are covered up. In Olympia, people were marching peacefully outside City Hall Sunday night. Last Saturday night, the police chief issued a proclamation saying that he is in solidarity with the protesters and all kinds of nice things in that. And he and the mayor, Cheryl Selby, took a knee in a symbolic gesture. Then Sunday night, the protesters and Olympia police, under his order, start shooting at them with all kinds of different ammunition and tear gas and so forth. Totally putting lie to his words and his actions. Now here's the thing. Police officers don't take these actions without the orders of their commanders. The commanders don't take these actions without the orders of the chiefs of their departments. And the chiefs of these departments don't take these actions without the orders of their executives. So that means that Mayor Cheryl Selby of Olympia, Mayor Victoria Woodards of Tacoma, and Mayor Jenny Durkin of Seattle, and Governor Jay Inslee of the state of Washington are all to be held accountable for these actions. I join State Representative Beth Dolio in calling on Attorney General Bob Ferguson to immediately open a special investigation into the murder of Manuel Ellis, but not just that. I call on Attorney General Ferguson to open special investigations into the governor and these three mayors for their crimes against the citizens of the state and the cities. And if Bob Ferguson is not able to do so, then he must act immediately to appoint a special prosecutor to do so. Of course, he's a political ally of the governor, so he can't himself carry out a fair investigation of the governor, so he must appoint a special prosecutor. But Governor Inslee must face an investigation since his state police carried out crimes against the citizens during this protest. These kinds of crimes cannot be tolerated. The police here have been the criminals, not the protesters. Now, you all know I wore the military uniform for over 2 decades. And it really pains me to be making these statements because I come from a family that has first responders. I wore the uniform. I have friends in the police departments. But accountability is absolutely mandatory. I have been held accountable when I was in the military, and I have had to, as an executive officer, send people to captain's mast and court-martial that I thought were amazing sailors when they made huge mistakes. And it pained me to do so, but it is necessary when people violate the law. Make no mistake, the police in this state and in every state in this country have violated the law. They have violated the people's First Amendment rights to free speech and freedom of gathering. They have violated their Fourth Amendment right to due process and many other rights. And they have committed illegal assaults and in some cases murders against citizens of this country because of the fear and the anger and everything else that's going on, and because of the intense xenophobia against people of color, particularly Black people in this country, and against others. But this is about Black Lives Matter, so I'm going to stay on target and just limit it to that issue. I urge everybody in Washington State to reach out to the Attorney General of Washington State, Bob Ferguson, and make sure he hears the message loud and clear. Open an immediate special investigation using an independent special prosecutor to look into the crimes committed by the governor and the state police, and by these three mayors that I've called out, and by any other city officials and police forces in the state that have committed such atrocities. And in your other states in this country, do the same in your states. These kinds of actions cannot be tolerated. In the Torah, we read in Leviticus 19:17, Hocheach tochiach et amitecha, you shall surely rebuke your people. This has never been more necessary. We are obligated, when we see people doing things wrong, we are obligated to call them out for it. We're also taught not to put a stumbling block before the blind, not to create obstacles for people to live and to survive. And that is exactly what has been going on here. I call on Congress to immediately start a 25th Amendment hearing against President Trump, because he is clearly incapable of making rational decisions and ruling in a sane and just fashion. He is clearly mentally incompetent. And people who would challenge my saying that, I hold not one, but two mental health provider credentials in Washington State. So yes, I am capable and authorized to make that statement. President Trump is not fit to be president. He should be immediately removed from office under the 25th Amendment because he is mentally ill and he is not fit to serve as the president of this country. He must be removed under that clause. And these kinds of actions must be stopped. It is past time that the citizens of this country have our rights denied based on hatred and bigotry and xenophobia. I am a disabled transgender Jew. For those who have not studied the history of the Shoah, the Holocaust, there were four main groups of people that Hitler targeted. Everybody knows that Hitler targeted the Jewish people, but he also targeted disabled people, queer people, and the Roma, commonly called gypsies. I'm not a gypsy or a Roma, but I am disabled, I am trans, I am queer, and obviously I'm Jewish. I'm three of the four categories that Hitler targeted. Trump is descended from people who were in the Nazis. His grandfather, who came to the United States illegally, was part of the Nazi Party. And he has very clearly shown that he is aligned with that ideology. And even before he was inaugurated, he was stirring up those kinds of fires and that kind of hatred in this country. He must be removed. He is unfit to serve. He has caused so much damage and so much hatred in this country since he was inaugurated and even before. I don't know if this country will ever recover from the damage and the pain he has caused. But the change has to happen, and it has to happen now. And I wish on this Friday in June, the first Friday of June, which is the Pride Month, that we could be celebratory and saying, yay, Pride. But remember that Pride was a riot. Pride was transgender women of color, Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, Miss Major, rebelling against the New York City police for their oppression of trans women of color and other queer people at the Stonewall Inn and other locations in New York City back in the late 1960s. And the Stonewall riot happens in '69. And clearly things have not improved in our country in the past 50 years. Diana, it's enough already. Things must change. I pray that peace can come, that change can come peacefully. But there are far too many people in our country who don't see it that way, that want to bring it through by war. And if that happens, it happens. I can't do war, but if war happens, it was meant to be. But for now, it's almost Shabbat, and I don't know if we'll have a peaceful Shabbat, but I wish that we all have a blessed Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom and Vorach.